In this sketch, I'm going to show you how to make a wonderful tomato sauce that you can use in literally any dish that requires tomato sauce. It's a foundation sauce that you can apply anywhere you like. I'm going to make it in a very big batch and portion it and keep it frozen. These small portions can be defrosted very quickly during the week when you're in a hurry, and you can have a fresh, wonderful tomato sauce whenever you need it.
Oh my God.
It's like a miracle.
Now, I often say that the best food is the simplest food, and I also say that simple food is often quite difficult. And that's true, but this is an exception to that rule. This recipe is very simple, very good, and very easy. Let's see what we've got here. A stick and a half of butter, about a half pound of shallots. We're going to use maybe a tablespoonful of salt, and 4 35-ounce cans of imported Italian Roma or plum tomatoes, and that's it. That's why this sauce is so flexible. First, put in your butter, and you don't want this butter to get too brown. Just melt it so it's hot enough to take the shallots. These are very roughly sliced. There's no need to worry about it, no need to get fussy with it, because it's going to be pureed later. So we want to sweat these very, very gently in moderate heat so that they don't brown and so that the butter doesn't brown. I'm going to add about a tablespoonful of salt, which I'm going to eyeball. That's 1 teaspoon. That's 2 teaspoons. That's 3 teaspoons. That equals a tablespoon. And the reason I use that much is because there's no added salt in these tomatoes. But the salt content of packaged tomatoes, tinned tomatoes, varies wildly. So check the label first. Don't add so much salt if you've got, a high sodium tomato. All right, now the shallots are nice and soft. It's very important that you cook them thoroughly and slowly, because otherwise you'll have raw, crunchy bits of shallot in your sauce. It will not be very nice. It's time to put in the tomatoes and just pour them in. You'll notice that I'm using a stock pot here. You might wonder why, when you could just as easily cook the shallots in a little saucepan and bring this together in a big mixing bowl. Well, then you'd have to wash the saucepan and the mixing bowl. This way, you've only got one thing to wash, so I do it in a stock pot. Okay, now's the fun part. Go in there, well, first give it a stir so that the tomatoes cool everything. Go in there with your hand and smash them up a little bit. Keep them submerged so that they don't squirt tomato juice all over the kitchen. Make sure that they're submerged. And just squeeze them. This will make it a little bit easier to blend them. Alright, that's pretty well pureed. I would say that's more than enough. I don't mind a little bit of chunkiness in there, but you want to have it pretty smooth. You're certainly not going to bother straining it. Now, if you wanted to do something really fancy and you needed to strain it, you could do that with a small portion of it, but it would be a real waste of time to strain this entire thing. Now, this sauce does not need to be cooked. It's already cooked. Tinned tomatoes are already cooked. And if you were using fresh ones, you would have to cook them for about 10 or 15 minutes. That would be essential. But these being already cooked, not necessary. All you need to do is puree it and get ready to portion it. I use a little Ziploc bag like this, and you'll be looking for about a half cup per adult serving, meaning that a pound of dry pasta, you would want about 2 cups. So I use 2-cup portions. You can make them bigger or smaller depending on how many people you have to feed. Now, to purge the air from these bags is very, very simple. Just put it into a vessel of water. Open one end, squeeze out the air. You'll see that the water will force out almost every bit of air. The best way to keep these, I think, is to put them all in a Tupperware container in the freezer. And you can just label that container instead of bothering to label each bag. Chuck them in the freezer, pull them whenever you want. These bags can be put into a little bowl or a little pot with a little hot running water going through it. They'll defrost in a matter of minutes. You'll be ready to go. Now we're going to cook with our basic tomato sauce. I'm going to make pasta puttanesca. It's a very tasty, very boldly flavored sauce. And I'll show you the ingredients now. These are, I'm not sure I'm pronouncing it right, so don't quote me, qianqian peppers from China. They have a wonderful, sweet, nutty flavor and aroma. They're unique. They don't have that bell pepper flavor. They're really different and wonderful. They're screaming hot, though. We're going to use them whole so that people can fish them out and not eat them by mistake. Here we've got some anchovy fillets. Now, some capers. You must use capers packed in salt. You must rinse them thoroughly to get all of the excess salt off of them, but they have maybe 3-4 times as much flavor as the ones packed in brine. So even though they're more expensive, you can get away with using fewer of them. They're really good. Here I've got Kalamata olives. I chose Kalamatas because they come off the stones very, very easily. Always use olives that have the stones. I'm not sure, but I suspect they take the stones out before they process them. And the ones that are processed without the stones just don't develop a good flavor. There's something in there that adds to the flavor of the olives. So use olives with stones and simply remove them yourself. All you've got to do is smash them. You can use the side of a knife, the side of a cleaver, you can use a rolling pin, whatever you happen to like. Give them a smash and the stones should come out. Some easier than others. Kalamata's marvelously easy. You could use green olives as well. No problem there. As long as they're stone in, they're not the cocktail olives that you put in your martini. Those ones, not good. Now we're going to start with extra virgin olive oil. This is an ingredient that I don't care for very much. I think it's grotesquely overused. But in this sauce, it's really essential. So, a good splash of that. Now you just toss in your ingredients. Here's some sliced garlic. I wouldn't want to use chopped or pureed garlic because that can be a little bit too strong, and people can then avoid eating these pieces because they can see them. Same idea with the peppers. Now it's time for a little dump and stir, just like the Food Network, eh? Dump and stir. Now, I've added a little of the oil that those anchovy fillets were packed in. That's got some flavor. With the capers, in with the olives. Dump and stir. Now just toss these around until they become nice and fragrant. I've left everything in pretty good sized pieces. The anchovy fillets will break down and pretty much vanish. They're absolutely essential. Don't get, squeamish about anchovies. They're really good. And we don't really want to cook this so much as bring out the flavor and let that flavor incorporate itself into the oil, which will then be distributed throughout the sauce. We're really just extracting some of the flavor from these. Don't cook it to death. And now we'll add 4 cups of our own basic tomato sauce. Now, is that convenient or what? This will be enough for about 8 servings of pasta, 8 quarter-pound servings if you eat more than that, and I certainly do. A quarter-pound of pasta is not enough for me. It might not be enough for you, but let's say enough for 8 quarter-pound servings. Maybe enough for 6 adults. Bring it to a simmer and let it simmer until it tastes really good. The real trick in making a good puttanesca is not to cook it much. Let it simmer for a couple of minutes. Don't overcook it. It will taste a lot better. This isn't a stew. It's not a ragu. This is something that you want to throw together very quickly. Now, one ingredient that we're going to add is a little Reggiano Parmigiano or Parmigiano Reggiano. And this has got to have a good flavor, and it matches very nicely with that. The other thing I'd like to add is some parsley. Now, here I have some curly parsley. Heaven forbid I should use curly parsley, right? Because every super chef you've ever seen on TV has told you flat leaf parsley has more flavor. Well, I guess they learned it in culinary school and never bothered to test it. Because if you taste the two together, you'll find that they taste exactly the same. Here's the advantage. It is so much easier to chop. That takes only a few seconds. All right, now, let's get a plate of this pasta together and see how it all turned out. The sauce is ready. Let's add some here. As you can see, we've got nice big pieces of everything. You can see the capers, you can see the olives, you can see the garlic, you can see the peppers. Okay, now I like a little Parmesan cheese. This is the Reggiano one, and I would say make some curls. They look very nice. And a vegetable peeler does a great job. them fall wherever they will. You can arrange them a little bit if you want. Now give the plate a bit of a wipe. And sprinkle on a little bit of your chopped curly parsley, which is supposedly a crime. Now we need to see how it tastes. I didn't put any salt in that sauce because the capers are full of salt, the olives are full of salt, and the anchovies are full of salt. I'll be very surprised if this sauce needs any salt. That is fabulous. Absolutely wonderful. The tomatoes have retained their freshness and their acidity, and it's sharp and it's wonderful. Because we haven't cooked the sauce all that much anyway. I can taste the olives, the capers. Get a nice punch from those peppers, but it's not overwhelming. It is salty enough, definitely. All the ingredients that we added to the sauce are distinct. They have their own integrity. The whole thing comes together perfectly. It's really nicely harmonized. I urge you to give it a try. Your family and your guests are going to be very, very happy. Cheers.